Well, I'm pleased to say we have managed to connect in Cambridgeshire with Mesa Gifford. That's not his real name. He gave up a career in finance. He decided to fly to Syria 3 years ago to fight with the Syriac Military Council. It's a Christian group who are allies of the Kurdish YPG. That's the People's Protections Unit. Now, he recently returned to the UK after helping to liberate the city of Raqqa. Mesa, thank you for joining us. How do you react to this news today that these last two of the Beatles, as they've become known, this notorious IS cell of British jihadis, have now been captured?
Well, it's a good day for justice, and it's a good day for the victims of ISIS. These are two of the most brutal and horrible terrorists in the world today, and their capture is the beginning of a process where we can put them on trial, we can understand more of their motives, and hopefully draw an end to this terrible saga that's gripped Syria for the past few years, the end of ISIS.
Was it cells like that, the reports of Jihadi John and the beheadings that became so familiar to us here in the West, that drove you to give up your successful career and go and fight against ISIS?
It absolutely was. I mean, I was sitting at my desk in London and I was watching the events on Sinjar Mountain with the thousands of refugees flooding there, starving, dying of thirst on the mountain. And then the worst images of those thousands of young girls being sold into slavery. And then, to top it all off, the terrible images of the journalists and humanitarian workers being butchered by people with the same accent as me, fellow countrymen from Britain. And to see also that Britain and America at the time didn't have a plan to get rid of ISIS really drove me to start exploring who are the groups on the ground who are secular and democratic, who are the ones who are going to inherit Syria and actually drive forward a peaceful solution to this crisis. So these people are absolutely the reason why I went out, and hundreds of other Brits and Americans went out too, to fight them.
And is there a sense when you were out there, did you get any sense of why these British men joined IS, why they wanted to fight for that cause?
Well, over the years, I've seen some terrible things from ISIS. It's the brutality of ISIS is best seen up close because it's very easy to be distant from this conflict and almost feel that it's not part of our problem. But by going over there, some of the things that I saw, particularly on their mobile phones, of the brutality to local people, the war crimes that they committed, these people had free reign in Syria. They must have felt sort of liberated from the constraints of a society in the UK and in Europe that they felt totally alien from. So they went there to really do what they like. They did the most terrible things to the local people, and now I think the chickens have come home to roost. They've made their bed, they're going to lie in it. They've been arrested by the YPG, and if the Brits want them to stand trial here, then they must request them and they'll send them across, or they'll stand trial in Syria.
The Home Office has, of course, warned that anyone joining the Syrian conflict on whatever side can be prosecuted for crimes committed abroad. And some people would say that what you did was wrong, was foolhardy and potentially illegal.
Well, it's not illegal. The law for those fighting against terrorists and joining literally the People's Protection Units, that's what the YPG stands for, and the YPG is also not listed on a terrorist database, is very grey and very open to interpretation. Obviously, there is a moral argument, and I do my best to talk to people and tell them that I went there to support local people, the true victims of the Islamic State and those that are fighting to liberate their own country. And I've always said the same thing. The people who are going to defeat ISIS and build a long-term solution to the Syrian crisis, they exist already. They're the YPG, they're the MFS, they're the SDF, the Syrian Democratic Forces. They believe in secular democratic values, which we in the West should support. So okay. I've always had a very clear about my opinion on what's going on there.
Mesa Gifford, thank you for joining us. I want to bring in Mark Campbell now, who's been sitting, listening to that. I know you support British families of people who have lost loved ones to IS. How important is the news today that these two men who were part of this notorious IS cell, who were British, have been captured?
I think it obviously brings up so many emotions for the families who have lost their loved ones fighting against ISIS. And I'd just like to pay tribute, if I may, to Nicholas, who very eloquently detailed his desire to see these men brought to justice. And I think justice is absolutely the thing that we need to be focusing on today. And I think we really need to be pressurising the British government to seek extradition of these two British men, to bring them back to the UK so they face justice, and not to be prosecuting people like Mesa Gifford and criminalising the people who have gone over to fight against ISIS. We have our first British case of the British government just a few days ago bringing a case against a British national whose very inspiration for going out to Syria to fight against ISIS was indeed these two British jihadists cutting off James Foley's head.
There has been some speculation that the British government will strip these two men of their British citizenship. It then is unclear what would happen to them. But you say it's critical that they come back to this country and they face justice here to get information, if nothing else.
I think, yes, to get information, but I think for Nicholas to get justice and for James Foley's mother to get justice. I think what we'll find is that the British government are very reluctant to bring these two men home. Why? Because they are closer in terms of geopolitics to Turkey. And it's Turkey who have been supporting ISIS during the conflict. And it's the British government who are actually supporting Turkey attacking the Kurds right now. Last night they began bombing civilians in Afrin, a Kurdish city. And so the British government are going to find this very uncomfortable because they choose a closer relationship with Turkey. Then they're more concerned with their arms sales to Turkey, in fact, than bringing justice for people like Nicholas.
Mark, thank you for coming in and speaking to us today.